Okay, I think we'll make a start. So welcome everyone to today's artist talk with Carolyn Mendelsohn. I'm Karanjit. I'm the digital creative producer at the Impressions Gallery. Just a bit of housekeeping to start with. You've all been muted on entry to the event, so if you could please keep yourselves on mute just to minimize background noise. You can have your video switched on or off, that's up to you, but please be aware that we're recording this event, which will be in our archive. I'd just like to thank our funders, who are the Paul Mellon Centre and Art Fund, who are funding our Open Out programme, the details of which are on our website. So just to quickly go over the running order, there'll be about 30 to 35 minutes hearing from Carolyn, and then after that there'll be a Q&A. If you're comfortable to ask your questions directly, there'll be a chance to do so at the end. Otherwise, you can post your questions in the chat and I'll go through them afterwards. The chat will be circulated after the event through your Eventbrite attendee information. If you found your way here without coming through Eventbrite for whatever reason, you can request to receive the chat by emailing us, and the email address will be in the chat as well. So excitingly, I can announce that the gallery will be reopening following this week's roadmap out of lockdown. So Being in Between will open in the gallery on the 18th of May and will be running until the 10th of July. And we'll be following all government guidelines with being open. Until then, we have a fantastic virtual exhibition of Being in Between, which has been produced by V21 Art Space. And we'll send a link to that in the chat if you haven't seen that already. So Being in Between by Carolyn Mendelsohn is a touring exhibition curated by Impressions Gallery director Anne McNeil, who's been working closely with Carolyn over a period of 4 years. The exhibition is a series of powerful photographic portraits of girls aged between 10 and 12, exploring the complex transition between childhood and young adulthood. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Carolyn.
Hi everyone, I'm really pleased to see you there. I'll give you a wave actually. It's so nice to see all your faces and to be able to talk to people from all over the country. It's fantastic. I'm looking forward to sharing my story with you, the story of my work and my journey to making Being in Between and then developing the project and then exhibiting the work at Impressions. I hope you enjoy it, and please do write any questions in chat, and hopefully, unless I run on, in which case, Karanjit, can you kind of wave at me and say, go like that? But I'd love to have the opportunity to answer any questions that you have. Here we go. So Being in Between, and I imagine quite a lot of you are reasonably familiar and have seen some of this work, but Being in Between is a series of portraits with recorded interviews of girls between 10 and 12, and it explores the transition between girlhood and adulthood based on my own memories of that time. And there's also, with the interviews, a soundscape composed by Graeme Copeland using the interviews I took of the girls' voices, which I'm going to give you the opportunity to hear tonight as well. And there's, over the period of 6 years, there's a series of 90 portraits. But first of all, I'll start off with my story. So I didn't ever plan on being a photographer, which may be surprising to some people. So I started off with the ambition as a young child to be an actor, and I, no matter what my family or parents said, I was very determined. And the one thing that I will always say is my driver is, if people say you can't do that or no, then I go, I want to prove them wrong. So I trained as an actor and I started working in theatre. But as an actor, I was never really happy because I always felt that maybe I wasn't as good as I wanted to be, but also not only that, I was really interested in the bigger picture. And so I started to make theatre and I started to direct shows, and I was interested in what they looked like and using different kind of ways of working with performance. And I co-directed really large epic shows like No Surrender, which took place in a big city hall, was a promenade show, to like dance theatre pieces where I started to use film and started to project. I remember directing this piece called Ice House, and then using film imagery to project within that piece to see what would happen as the performer interacted with the film work. I started to be seen as a filmmaker, so all this was kind of organic. I'm very much, I was a self-taught filmmaker, but I started to be seen as an artist filmmaker, and I got commissioned to make film and to make artist film, to make short documentary. Absolutely loved it. Always based on story of people or place or location. And so this is probably the biggest example was Lumino, which was a piece of work I did and I hate to say it was 1998, and Anne McNeil actually was part of Photo 98 at the time. It was a commissioned piece, a massive audacious piece, 2-screen film projection on the side of the P&O ferry, exploring the journeys of people who'd come on the ferries over many centuries to the Port of Hull and then on to other countries, using archives, found footage, exploring people's stories. We also had installations. So I was always very interested in how you create work based on the site and the location and the story that it might contain, and the juxtaposition of those stories with the site that you're projecting those images on. So why photography? Well, I'd been doing things as a creative and as a filmmaker and artist, and I would be traveling around to different parts of the country, to different parts of the world to be commissioned to make film. And I had my first child, as a baby, he would come with me. I would find childcare for him. And then I had 3 children. Which always sounds like I just suddenly came across these 3 kids and took them home. And I didn't. I had 3 children under the age of 6. And, you know, obviously when I had my second and third, Sam and Poppy, I realized, and I moved to Bradford, I couldn't do this work anymore. And I kind of lost my identity a bit, but I was always a creative, always felt I was creative. And one day, you know, I picked up a stills camera. And I'd never really seriously taken photography before. I loved photography. I loved going to galleries, looking at photo books, but I'd never seen myself as a photographer. But I had a real epiphany. And I realized that I could use the camera to tell stories. I realized that I could explore creatively things that interested me and be playful with photography. But I could do it within my own like square meter. And I became very obsessed, learning as much as possible. And I would, of course, take photographs of my family. I started to become known as a kind of lifestyle photographer as well. But all my work was always about, you know, if you look at the picture on the left, it's a story. It's always about telling a story. There's a certain theatricality between the work. I always did portrait work. And I just wanted to create work that pulled people in, that engaged people. And it was kind of a playful idea at that point. And I started to get commissioned to do commercial work and kind of some fashion work and obviously portraiture. And what I always say to people is, if you are a photographer or if you're learning to be a photographer, always take pictures, photographs of the things around you. And obviously those things around me were my poor children who were always, you know, the subject of my camera. But yeah, I love the playfulness of doing fashion photography, making album covers, doing work on location and being creative and responding to that location. But the thing that really stirs my heart is doing work that's kind of based on real people and real lives. So though I love doing fashion work and story work and it's fun and I can be playful, what I really love is to tell the story of real people. So that's one side of it. So this is a piece of work I did I was documenting some work in this care home, people living with dementia. And they said, you take portraits, don't you? And I went, well, yeah, I do. And they said, can you take portraits of the people that live here and their families. So I did, and obviously I was sent to this very plain beige room with huge amount of light, and I thought, oh no, I had to think on my feet. So I wanted to create very dignified pictures and in a quiet environment. So I worked with a care worker. We put a blanket up behind and attached it to a cupboard. I closed this is all natural light. I closed the blinds until there was a tiny gap. And then in that 15 minutes with each person, I very quietly took their pictures. And what was amazing for me, everything I do is like a learning experience. What was amazing for me was that what I learned was that a camera and the act of having your photograph taken almost becomes so familiar to us that even those people living with dementia who actually are very seriously ill recognize it, and for that moment were truly themselves. This is a piece of work that I would love to continue. So occasionally I get work that scares the hell out of me, and actually I do respond to work that makes me terrified, which is probably a lot of the things I do. So the bigger it is, I used to think, why do small when I feel the fear for a small thing, when I can do a huge thing and the fear is just the same. So I get, asked to do things like a reimagining of the women's canteen at Phoenix Work, and that was by an artist called Flora Lyon, and it was on its 100th anniversary. And I remember saying to them, hold on, but I just do portraits. But actually what I did use was my background, which was theatre and being able to create tableau. And I only had 3 hours really 2 hours to work with these people who didn't all know each other, different amazing women from Bradford, from different walks of life. And this, though it scared the heck out of me, I absolutely loved, because I love learning new things and I love doing things that are way beyond my comfort zone. Also, as a photographer, I will ask people, so I knew I needed to light this properly. I only had a few lights, so I asked my friend Jonathan Turner to come and bring his lights so I could light it properly. But always worth doing things that stretch you. So personal projects are, my beating heart, like the work with real people. And so what I do is I use my camera to explore the world, to ask questions and to find out more about things that I'm interested in learning about. So as I mentioned before, I guess as an artist, my photography and film looks at personal stories, and I respond to locations and histories. And much of my own work has explored stories and narratives around experience of migration, diaspora, and my own lived experience. I'm really, really drawn to exploring those hidden stories, those quiet stories, and to give, through photography, through film, a voice to those who were silenced or marginalized in some way. And I always look for a way to reflect and communicate the diversity in the world we live in, and to make sure it's like authentic and meaningful, and not just because it's ticking a box, but that the engagement is meaningful. So let me tell you more about the Being in Between story. I'm very rooted in my childhood. I'm still, I'm getting on, but I'm kind of still that 8-year-old. So I still remember very acutely what it was like to be 10, 11 and 12. So there I am. On the right, I'm 10 with, ironically, a camera. And I think it's an Instamatic camera, probably on holiday. And then about 11 or 12 in the picture on the left, looking and feeling very uncomfortable. And that age, I remember, I would always be wearing layers and clothes and hiding myself. And I also remember having these huge thoughts in my head, kind of existential thoughts that I felt I couldn't possibly tell anyone, because they would think I was completely bonkers and probably would lock me up in an asylum and I would never see the day again. But I just remember having these big thoughts, and being that age, when you're not familiar with it, there's so many things that are changing, and then those thoughts that come that as an adult you completely recognize. As a child, as a young person, it was very unfamiliar with me. So there I was, always covered up, always feeling self-conscious. And I kind of think the starting point really for Being in Between was the memory of this very hot day where my dad was doing a barbecue, and it was a case of, should I put on this pair of shorts? And I remember I'm the girl that just wore layers, and was very embarrassed about everything. And I remember spending about 2 hours in my bedroom thinking about, should I put on this pair of shorts, shouldn't I? And then after 2 hours of going backwards and forwards, because it was a very hot day and because we were having a barbecue, I plucked up the courage to put on the shorts. And my memory is my dad coming into the house, standing at the foot of those stairs and looking up at me and saying, your legs look really white and chubby in those shorts. And then me, you know, it's a very flippant comment, but me being that age just went, okay, straight to my room, back into my layers. And it was only as I got older, my friends started to question me about my kind of obsession with my fat legs or my white chunky leg. They go, what is it? I realized it was this little comment that my dad had made when I was about 11, and how that had started to shape how I was to become. And then I also realized that when I had friends with girls, with children, but girls in particular, they get to the age of 8, there were still these free-spirited 8-year-olds. They got to 9 and 10, and they'd suddenly become very self-conscious. They were no longer running down hills with their arms stretched wide, but started to become this self-aware individuals. And so I thought, this is really significant. There's something about this transient age between 10, 11 and 12 where girls change massively, where the things that are said to them become how they see themselves. The brain is such kind of flexibility that things that people say actually affect your psychological development. And I thought, you know, I want to explore this. I want to see girls of that age, and I want them to give them the opportunity to be who they are. And so I set up a process. I wrote a blog, and I obviously had done lots of work, lots of portrait work that I could use in that blog. And I told people my story, and I said, please, if you are 10, 11, 12, if you know a girl of that age, and they are interested in having their portrait taken and me asking them questions of their lives, please can you forward them to me? So I advertised on email, social media, asking people, and slowly I started to get people involved. It was like a big process though. I made contact via email, always involved their parents. I wrote a questionnaire where they put their name, their hobbies, any special needs. I gave them instructions, come to the portrait sitting in the clothing of your choice. Do not let your parents or carers intervene. I want you to wear what you choose to wear, and you can wear anything. And then I'm going to ask you a question about your lives. I then would get a release form and talk about the necessity to sign the release form if they wanted to be part of it, so that the image could be part of the project. And in the sitting, I always use the same backdrop. There it is. And there's me very candidly putting my backdrop up. I've learned as I've gone on how to put my lights on properly. I did a talk with the demonstrations. We said, Karen, don't put your lights on like that. It's really foolish. So I take on board criticisms. I do that. But this is basically my setup, which I would cart this around at the back of my car. I'd borrow spaces, cart this around everywhere. So you can see here it is in different spaces, double diffusion. So I'll use diffuser, that's a beauty dish, and I'll use a grid and a diffuser, and then get a shower curtain, put it on. So what I'm going to do actually is, just to get you into the mood, as part of this, I would take the portrait and I would talk to the girls about how they were going to stand, but then I would also interview them. So the soundscape is part of the exhibition, but also I made a short film that I'll show you a little bit of, because the girls' voices juxtaposed with their portraits is really powerful. Graeme Copeland was the sound composer.
I'm 10 years old. I love my family, friends, acting, singing and dancing. I dislike pigeons, clowns and really big dogs.
Love maths and I like art too.
I dislike it when people are mean to other people because I've had it done to me and I know what it feels like, and it's really hard to go through. When I'm an adult, I was thinking I could be a teacher, but then I changed my mind and I want to be a vet now because I love animals.
I'm 12 years old. I'd like to help people in any way I can, that's all I'd like to do. My dream is I'd like to have world peace, but if I can't have that, then I'd like to be able to fly. I'd wish for a cure for cancer.
I hope in the future to move to France because I just love the way it's so large and so hot, and I like all the little cobbled streets. I find it really sweet. I would like to either be a doctor or a hairstylist. I really hate people being mean and cruel. My ambition is to save many people's lives.
My dream is to become a princess. I'd like to tell you I'm autistic. I don't always understand things the same. My hobbies are singing, dancing and making things. I'm scared of ghosts. I am 11.
I love cheese and learning new things. I don't like strawberries or trying to do something and not being able to do it.
I love animals, especially dolphins and dogs, and I also love performing.
I love singing, acting, dancing and reading.
I'd like to be a dentist, a clothes designer or in the Royal Ballet.
I would really like to be a unicorn.
I hate spiders because I'm scared of them.
My ambition is to be a famous ballerina or to be in the Olympics for gymnastics.
I'm scared of what other people think of me.
I wish for everyone to be treated equally.
So you see, you can hear, obviously I could have played you a lot more of that, but you can hear those girls' voices, and in the exhibition with the girls' voices juxtaposed with their images. These images are big in the exhibition, and you hear these girls' voices, these young girls' voices, and it just is very affecting. So this is Mabel. Mabel was the very first girl I took a portrait of, and she became the blueprint for the whole series. And I'll just explain something. For all the shoots, I'll say, look straight into the lens. And the reason is because I'm wanting those girls to be looking at us, and I'll explain that to the girls. It's kind of like a co-production. We work together to create these portraits. So I say, look straight into the lens, don't stare, but really look, see if you can see yourself and look. And the idea is that when your picture is printed, you're looking at us. So we go into a gallery and we are looked at, rather than the turning the whole thing on its head of being looking at the subject or the model. So Mabel, this is Mabel. And then I interviewed Mabel. I will also actually, whilst Mabel is here, I talk about how they might stand. So it might be that they cross their arms, or it might be they stand slightly at the side. Their face will always be forward. but it's about them feeling comfortable in a position that is strong and truthful to them, and wearing the clothes that they feel they want to wear. So Mabel said, I fear that one day we'll all be the same, that people will get an idea of how we should live, how we should act, and how we should look like, and everyone will be afraid to be different. It's amazing, the things that they say are, they're just really powerful. So I kind of like seeing them in little family groups, really. So you see here a real cross-section of the girls. Alice, I'll talk about them in more detail later, Abby, Heavens, Maria. These girls are all 10 actually, but I took 90 portraits actually over more like 6 years of a whole community of girls. Eden and I, who I met about 1.5 years ago, or maybe slightly longer, full of confidence. My ambition is to show people who I really am through what I'm good at, and put a message out that you can be who you want to be, and not anyone else, not who anyone else wants you to be. And then Erin, and this was at the time of Brexit, Erin, who was really, really concerned about people seeing her differently and judging her and being ashamed of her. And their ability to articulate these huge messages is so important to get their story out there. So Erin, as you can see, says, I'm in between in my own way. I speak 2 languages and have 2 nationalities. So sometimes I think and dream in one language, and sometimes I think and dream in the other. I feel that people might be ashamed of me because I have a different culture. And I think, why is this the case? It shouldn't be. And then Abby came. The work was exhibited at earlier stages. So after about a year, the work was exhibited in Hull in a much smaller state. And I did call outs, and Abby came and she said, obviously I say, come in the clothes of your own choice. I hadn't met her though before. And then Abby came in this cloak with a sword. And as a photographer, I remember thinking, how's that going to work with my lights? And then I thought, oh, no, stop that. Stop worrying about the technical side. Abby stood in front of my lights and just became this really regal character and really important. And her interview, she was amazing. And I remember her saying, when I'm an adult, I want to be an architect. And when I get enough money, I will move to Romania and raise wolves. Just brilliant. Abby's dad said to me that she was actually starting to really doubt herself, starting to wonder whether she should wear what she wanted to, because her friends had started to tease her. Now, because of Being in Between, Huffington Post and BuzzFeed started to show the work and wrote about the work, and the work went viral, including Abby's picture. And adults underneath from all over the world were writing about Abby, saying, wow, that girl, I want to be Abby when I'm grown up. She's so cool. How cool is Abby? And this actually really affected Abby's kind of trajectory into young womanhood. And it was a wonderful thing for her. And so she became much more confident and less caring about what her peer group thought. And she's now, Abby must be about 16 or 17 now. So, and she took up photography for a bit. And now I think she is a creative and is very happy to have been in this. And there we have Betty and Lara. And usually I'll have a neutral expression with the girls, but Lara obviously had this kind of just really engaging smile that was part of who she is. So there are some smiley photos. And then Betty, who I met in Hull, said, I'm scared of being in a room by myself when it is completely silent. And there's just really powerful statements that they make. And then Maria, who came in and told me that she was really scared and would shake like a leaf and was terrified of everything, then said to me, and I thought she was extraordinary. And I hope she feels extraordinary now, but she said, my dream is to become a good teacher so I can help children overcome their difficulties and become great people like doctors and prime ministers. And that's what's really fascinating about Maria, because she wants to help others to achieve their dreams. And mainly the young people wanted to achieve their dreams rather than think about how they could help other people. So I thought it was really really touching that she wants to enable other people. And Aisha and Heavens. And then Heavens was like this huge, energetic 10-year-old and just had the most brilliant attitude. And I remember saying, I love being adventurous, creative in drawing. I hate being bossed around. And I think you can kind of tell a bit about their lives by what they say. I would really love to be a doctor and I wish nobody died in the world. And then probably one of the most well-known portraits is of Alice, who is a local girl, actually. And Alice was just a very quiet and very shy girl who came in and you wouldn't necessarily have noticed Alice. And then she stood in front of the backdrop. Wherever I put my lights, she just had this really unique luminosity. She almost was extraordinary with the lights and the camera, and this kind of really unusual otherworldly look, almost like a Tudor look about her, and something behind her eyes that was really compelling. So Alice, I used to aspire to be a teacher, but now I want to be a vet. I dislike it when people are mean to other people because it's really hard to go through. So there was lots of talk in the earlier stages about people bullying, people being kind to each other, self-image, and Megan, Claudia, and Nishat. And Megan, you know, Megan, I dislike McDonald's, I dislike cancer, and people make life hard for others. My ambition is to make an impact on the world. It doesn't have to be big, but I want to make a difference. Now, Megan comes from a family where her younger sister had neuroblastoma, which is eye cancer. But as a whole family, they're quite extraordinary. And, you know, it's just in passing, I dislike cancer. But to be able to say that and to be able to express what you want to do at that age is a huge thing. And then Claudia, this is like the polar opposite with the first statement, which I love. I dream, I go to lots of parties, we drink from chocolate fountains and stuff our faces with marshmallows. So you get this real, like, though I could say something like that as well, but you get this real feeling of childhood and then this real fear. I really fear my parents and family will get really ill and I will be left by myself. I kind of remember that myself. Heather, Nuri, and Megan, and then Ishrat. I want to be a doctor because my mum has really inspired me. I love her last statement. My ambition is to swim a whole length because I cannot swim properly yet. And my wish is to have a massive room of stationery. So you can see this real variety of the things that they were saying. Jodie, who came to the shoot, I love the fact she came with a hairband on. You know, these little details, I like it when the little bitten nails, hairbands, all those things go towards their portrait. My dream is to be a horse rider as well as a dancer, as well as a gymnast. And my hopes for the future are for homeless people to be off the streets, for the people of Africa to have food, and for the world to be a happy place. And Catalina, who came over with her cousin, actually, who was just struck me as one of the most just extraordinarily imaginative. I fear being alone in the dark, spiders, everyone I know in the world dying, being the last person on earth, no books to read, and a world without happiness, that would be terrible. Many of these girls never get the opportunity to, many young people never get the opportunity to say what they think or feel because nobody asks them the questions. And one of them had said to me that what she loved about Being in Between is that no one had asked her these questions before. I'd asked her and I'd listened. I'd like to introduce you to, if you've seen the film, you'll be aware of Olivia, but Olivia came and she again was this hugely engaging in the moment girl. She was extraordinary, full of energy, really tiny. She looks a lot older in this picture than she was. And she said, I wish to have a happy life and accomplish my dreams. And then Olivia said to me at the end of my series of questions, is there anything else you would like me to say? And I remember thinking, none of them have said that to me before. And I said, okay, Olivia, what would you like to tell me? And then she told me something which was so important that I hadn't even thought would be a possibility. So I had never asked a question. I was born with a heart condition, which has a really complicated name. I can't remember, but basically I was born with 4 chambers in my heart and only 2 of them are working. So what you can see, and what I didn't realize, is that is that Olivia has had major heart operations, 7, and I'm due for another in 6 months. I used to be worried, but now I'm used to them, so it's just normal. She's now 17 and she's doing really, really well. And this is just such, I just feel I understood about that, her engagement. And, you know, I noticed that she has a scar that I didn't notice before because I just looked at her face. And she then, I learned through the process of doing these, so I learned via Olivia that I should always ask, do you have anything else you would like me to talk about? Do you have anything else you would like to talk to me about? I think that's it, yeah. So we have Jamie Lee, Zara and Olivia here. And Jamie Lee, when I said, is there anything you'd like to say to me that I haven't asked? I'd like to tell you I'm autistic. I don't understand things in the same way as other people. This was a learning thing for me. I said to Jamie Lee's mum, you know, Jamie Lee said this. I don't know whether to put it by her with her portrait because I don't want people to just go, oh, poor Jamie Lee. And her mum said, no, please put it, because Jamie Lee is really, her autism is really important to her. It's part of her identity. She's really proud of it. So again, another learning thing for me was, you don't have to be so careful. Just listen and let people say and be who they are and celebrate that. And we have Leela, whose brother has a liver condition. So she wants to be a scientist and make cures for people with illnesses. And then my dream is that the world is a peaceful place. So you can see these girls, some look like little girls, some look grown up. And this is Caitlin, and I like the kind of juxtaposition between her selfie t-shirt and the fact I'm taking a portrait. And Caitlin was in the kind of whole group. And she was about 11, but looked about 16. So it's that whole, looked so old, but I love the kind of, there's ironies there. I love my family and I hate it when people are mean to each other. And the brilliant Alice, who came, her mum contacted me and said that Alice would like to be in it. She would like to be in it. Alice has congenital condition, which means her face looks different to other people. And her mum was really worried that maybe I would try to Photoshop her. And I went, absolutely not. No, it's about who these girls are and celebrating that. And I interviewed Alice and she told me about herself. She loves writing. If you watch, there's a film made by, where Alice is interviewed now by New Focus, and you can hear more of what Alice has to say. It's a brilliant film called Girl Power. I love writing. When I'm an adult, I want to be an author, and maybe I want to set up a business to help children who are different to us, like either in foster families who are in care, who have a disability. I have craniosynostosis. And when I was a baby, the bones in my head had already fused together, and she has had to have various hospital appointments and operations. This is a really powerful photo. It was picked up by Girl Gaze, who then shared Alice's image in a very powerful way. Again, here's another group of girls. I love it when they choose to wear a t-shirt, which like Ruby's influencer t-shirt. Sadie had the same existential fears that I had actually, but it very quietly powerful. In my ideal world, there won't be global warming, won't be war and hate. I have a strange fear when I think of the universe that there's nothing else out there and I can't get my head around it. I get muddled up in my thoughts. I find it quite frightening. And then Ruby with her influence.
Sorry, just a few more minutes.
Okay, all right, I've got my timer on. I'll give myself 4 minutes if that's okay. So it's Ruby, and then Silver. My ambition is to help the world in all its conflict, and to give other people a voice. I'm going to really shoot through all these now. Kiara, who's also in the film, who wants to be a surgeon, and also talks about not littering the planet, and the kind of, that's what's happened, the change in what the girls have had to say, their awareness of the world, the planet, and all those issues around it, and blessing. And then my daughter Poppy, who actually said on the day before her 12th birthday that she would sit for me. She had never been part of the project, she'd never been interested in the project. And then my hopes for the future are that I can carry on with the things that I love, carry on with the things that make me feel confident. And I hope I stay as carefree as I am at the moment, and Stephanie. Now I'm going to zoom through these. Amy, I just have to share Amy. I am the oldest of my friends, but I am one of the smallest. It doesn't actually matter that much, though. Just because you're small doesn't mean to say you can't go on to do great things. And then the last two were, obviously I've shown you a selection. Some of them are in the exhibition, some of them aren't, but the last two, Becca and Lottie, I really want to share with you. Lottie on the left was the very last girl, and Becca, her sister, who has cerebral palsy. And it was really important in order to get a representation that I had a girl who had challenges to access places. And the fact she's chosen to wear, I'm just in it for the parking. So Becca's quote about wanting to do what her sister can do and her wish to walk. And then scarily, and Lottie, who at the very end and the very last February talked about worrying about the coronavirus as well as being scared about river rising. So it took 6 years. It took 6 years. Why? Because I wanted it to be a diverse community. And it takes that long. It was in my own time. It's a personal project. I would do call outs. Initially it's for any girl of that age, and then it became girls who were not represented, and it takes time. And did the content of the interviews change? Yes, initially it was about fears on war and image, and then it moved into the world and the ecology and awareness of the planet, and then finally to coronavirus. And it's about, it was so significant watching that, how the interviews marked the history and sociology of what's happening, and I learned a massive amount. The work's won lots of competitions, but I mean, I say that it's won a few competitions, but what I always think, enter competitions to get your work out there. I never expect to win, but the RPS IP 159, the gold medal, really opened doors to me in that it meant that girls were seen by a wider audience. The work has been shown at different stages in solo and group exhibitions, but never as complete as Impressions Group, which is now the finished. And you know, there are ups and downs, and mentors like Anne McNeil who've really helped me through this when I've worried that maybe I should stop. Maybe people will get bored. I remember like 3 years ago, she was going, no, you've got to, this is about creating a significant body of work. And these are images of the girls with their pictures at various exhibitions, many of them older now. So, you know, Impressions Gallery and me, they asked me for a studio visit. I tried to think of loads of ideas because I thought that's what they wanted, but actually they were interested in being in between. They've been following the project and supporting it. And then they invited me to exhibit, and Anne has written an essay for the book. And then I'm going to really rush through this. So give me a few more minutes. And then coronavirus came. So it was due to be exhibited last summer. Coronavirus came, everything was cancelled. It was quite devastating for all of us, I think. But I had finished the work. The work was ready. And so then at the end of, towards the end of last year, Anne McNeil said to me, she's been amazing, said, right, let's put the work up. We, you know, because we had started to open up, hadn't we? So she curated the work. We went there safely. This is Anne busy looking at the work so that we were selecting the images. And then we have the installation at the beginning of January. Or was it? I can't remember. Yeah, I think it was either December or January. There we go. And that's the work in situ. Do have a look at the virtual gallery. It's amazing. And then when it's open, do come along. Do come along and see it. And obviously the book, we did the Kickstarter in the summer, and the book I am so proud of. You can get it from Impressions Gallery to a very special price whilst the exhibition is going on. The last word I just want to leave to Lottie and Becca, because this is what the project is all about.
Showing what we really are. Yeah, showing who we really are and letting our voice be heard. And so we're not in the shadows.
So you're not in the shadows. Thank you so much. Becca, thank you. Lottie, that was brilliant. Thank you.
So we're not in the shadows, and that's the whole point of this work. So those girls get seen and heard by everybody. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have some questions for me. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Oh, thanks so much, Carolyn. That's fantastic. Really powerful words to end on as well. Yeah, so any questions? There's one in the chat from Romina who says, are all the girls Bradford based, and how big are the images in the real gallery? So I guess how big are the prints?
So in the gallery, the images I'd say are about A1, just around A1 size. The girls aren't just from Bradford, they're from a lot from Yorkshire, but they're girls from London. There's one girl that came over from America to be part of it, girls that travelled. And also I would be doing a talk in, I remember doing a talk for Wex in London, and then I did a call out in London. So they let me use, oh, that was my timer. I finished slightly early, that's good. And then they used I used their space to do some shoots there. So girls are from across England, really. There's no, unfortunately, I don't think I have any Scottish girls, but there are many English girls and some girls who've travelled from different countries to be part of it. And yes, Anne, we're not in the shadows. Anne has brilliantly used as the title of her essay. I love her essay so much. It's really worth seeing. Even more than the book is your essay, Anne. So.
Thank you, Carolyn. I've just overridden the mute. Thank you.
All right.
I have one question from Ian, or more accurately, Ian's daughter, who is with him, who asks, is it interesting how the answers to your questions have changed over time?
Oh, honestly, Ian's daughter, I don't know what your name is, but it is so interesting. And I didn't even realise until I finished the project how significant it was, how they kind of mark Amelie. I love that name. That's one of my favourite names. So Amelie, I didn't realise how important that would be until I finished the work over 6 years, how what the girls said kind of reflected what was happening in the world and what was happening with young people and their reactions. So from the fear of homeless or the worry about people being homeless, there were worries about war. There was a lot of stuff about self-image, about not being able to be who you are and having to be how other people saw you. Then it became environmental issues. A couple of years ago, they were all the young people were so well educated on it and passionate about environmental issues. And then that moved on. And obviously then the last being Lottie talked about coronavirus. So it kind of reflects a whole history, which is, I always think is amazing. I never expected that to happen. It was a really unexpected outcome.
Thanks, Carolyn. Any other questions? Feel free to use the raise hand function, which is found in the reactions option at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we can, or maybe you're able to just unmute and ask away.
I think somebody wants to know what camera I used, so I will tell you. Yep. So I used a Nikon D800. So often people think it's like a film, I'm using medium format film. I've used a trusty old Nikon D800, which is a big old camera with a portrait lens, which is an 85 1.4 portrait lens, which I really love. So that's my bit of technical know-how. I'll sometimes, it's a prime lens that I use. I'll sometimes use a 50 if I need to, because the room is maybe a bit too little. I'm really bad with words sometimes. Sorry, Anne.
What do you think is the difference between presenting your work in an exhibition and having it in a book?
It's so different, Anne. You know what? I love both. They're really different. So I really want people to go to the exhibition, because seeing that work in real life is so powerful in a way that people do not expect, I think. In a way that they might think, wow, these pictures are powerful, these portraits are powerful, but you go into the real exhibition and there's like soul and depth to those portraits are big in the exhibition. The book I just adore because it is something that people can carry with them, and they work so differently in the book. I think the book is as good but different, but I think they all beat just seeing the work online, don't they?
Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get back in the gallery.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say this, but please all come and, well, maybe not all rush at once, but it will absolutely stir your emotions, get your heart, it'll give you goosebumps. And seeing the young women, the girls, will just give us all hope for the future.
Yeah, really does. I think that's the thing. People who've in earlier stages have seen the work, and I've sat quietly in the background just to see what people's reactions are. And people have cried and they unexpectedly have brought, it's brought them to tears unexpectedly. And I didn't expect that myself, because there's something kind of powerful about those girls and about the fact that they are on that cusp of their future lives.
I also think it's the power that you talked about authenticity in your presentation, but it's you handed the power over to them, and they have the power as well. So I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much always never about the power of. I'm always addressing that power you have as a photographer. It kind of helps that I'm complete klutz, because that instantly means that, you know, I'm tripping over things, or they're not. No one is intimidated when I've got a camera in front of them. But the whole point is actually that I'm wanting them to be equal participants in that process. That's really important to me.
I think that comes over loud and clear. Okay, I'll mute now.
One more question from the chat, and then I'll come to you, Judy. Sorry. Angelina says, I'd love the opportunity to follow these beautiful girls into the future. Could this be a long-term project? And please, will you come to Shropshire? So
I'd love to come to Shropshire, Angelina. I know Angelina from when my first baby was tiny, Oscar. So I'd love to come to Shropshire. So what am I going to say? So this has been a really long project. 6 years for me is a long time. So I feel that it's complete. What I believe is that the work is of the girls, it's about celebrating this really unique time rather than following them up. It's about making this time in their lives important, and the focus is on that. However, somebody actually said to me the other day, what if one of the girls became a photographer and followed it up? And I said, that would be perfect. Wouldn't that be amazing if in like 10, 15 years time, one of the girls became a photographer and then revisited all those pictures? That would make me really happy.
Judy, if you'd like to ask.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that, Carolyn. It was. Can you hear me, by the way?
I can, yeah.
It's a really interesting talk, and nice to actually see you. Just two questions. Just going on my own previous work, working with diverse communities, was there any reaction that changed in terms, particularly with the Asian girls, maybe Sikh, Muslim, in terms of how the photographs were used? Was there any discussion on that at all?
Well, you know, it's a really interesting question, Judy. I think because I always said that how they were going to be used, obviously those girls who were part of it, their families agreed for the work to be used in that way. So I didn't ever meet a girl whose family were uncomfortable with that. So culturally, for some girls, that is a big no-no. But for the girls whose parents or carers said they could be part of it, they understood the project and they're absolutely fine about it, Judy. So.
And then the other question is, have you got any ideas for future projects that you might embark upon? Or
have loads, but they're secret. No, I have lots of ideas. It's kind of, you know, I'm working quietly on some of them. And obviously I have Through Our Lens, which takes up a massive amount of my time at the moment, and we're in lockdown. So there's stuff, I'd love to be out there taking photos, but it's kind of tricky. But I do have various plans.
Great.
Various projects.
Thank you.
I think, did somebody else have a question?
I think Shan had a question.
Yeah.
I didn't have a question. I just thought it was a brilliant talk, and I'm just so thrilled that we're all going to be able to come to the gallery and see it. And thank you to Impressions, all of them, and Pippa, everyone, and especially you, Carolyn, for looks like a really wonderful show. Your presentation was very moving, especially the film where you have worked with the girls. It's special. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, really appreciate it, and so looking forward to seeing you.
Oh, me too.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Carolyn, for a wonderful presentation. I'd like to thank the Paul Mellon Centre again, and also Art Fund. The film made by New Focus that Carolyn mentioned is called Girl Power. It's a fantastic film in which New Focus interview Alice, Amira and Kiara, who are featured in the series. Really powerful film. We'll post a link to that in the chat, and it's also available on our website. One other thing, I'm just going to quickly share my screen. The book of Being Inbetween is still available. For obvious reasons, there's a slight delay in getting the books out, so please be patient. But it is a fantastic book published by Blue Coat Press at a special exhibition price of £24.
It's a very special price, and I'm so proud of that book and having done it during lockdown. I'd really love it if people could. I'm not, you know, I don't actually get much money from the book, so it's not me like going, buy my book. It's just that it's really precious and really special, and I'd love people to get it. So, yeah.
And to purchase your copy, there's an email address at the bottom there, bookshop@impressionsgallery.com. And then one final thing is, if you could please take 5 minutes to fill out our survey on digital audiences, if you have the time. It'll really help us to understand how we're managing our digital content and how we can move it forward in the future. So I think that's everything. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and look forward to welcoming you into the gallery in person in May.
Thank you, Carolyn, so much. So it's been a pleasure working with you.
Oh, thank you.
Sometimes. Thank you, everyone, for also joining us. And as I said, we so look forward to welcoming you all in person from May onwards until the 10th of July to see Being Inbetween. In fact, we'll be putting on the kettle for everyone.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you.